Welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt Thiessen. With me today is our own pianist in residence, Sam Page. This is your daily dose of happy. We are so happy you decided to join us today.
And Sam, I thought you might be interested in something because, you are our pianist in residence. You really are, right?
Oh.
I don't think anybody can challenge you for that title. But as you know, I've got my keyboard and I've been practicing stuff and I've been trying to, create little arrangements of not anything. Actually, I do have one tune of my own that I'm working on. I can't, Shannon, you have to understand, Sam is somebody who can just sit at the keyboard and music flows out of his fingers. He doesn't plan it. It's all purely improvised and it's gorgeous.
That's my favorite kind.
So that's like the standard that I'm trying to reach for. I'm nowhere near that standard. I'm trying to see, can I create something that sounds good and has some nice chording and so forth?
You can do it.
I just wanted to let you know I'm working on stuff like that. And I actually have a little tune I put together. I'm trying to turn into an arrangement. So I don't know when. At some point, I'm going to bring it onto the show and dare to play it for you, and hopefully you'll like it.
I look forward to hearing this because I know you've been playing, and it sounds like you've been working at it. So I definitely look forward to hearing it.
Well, I've been working. I mean, I got this for play. Shannon, my background is when I was a kid, I took like 6-7 years of piano lessons, and then I stopped playing. I just stopped. I hadn't played until this past Christmas when my brother gave me an electronic keyboard. And I said, okay, let's start doing this again. And so I've really only been playing about 9.5, 10 months, something like that. But I have the background that helps a bit. So I'm like an intermediate beginner.
I love that. I definitely got down on the keyboard whenever I was a kid, but haven't picked it back up.
You have to stay with it. It's true. Yeah. And when I was in my teens, I picked up the guitar and I was playing rock and roll and so forth. So I did have that musical background too.
That is cool. I never played guitar, but I respect those who do. I always think it's wow.
Well, it's one of those. Well, you should know this. I mean, as a pianist, knowing the piano basically teaches you how scales work, how chording works, all that kind of thing, which really translate easily when you're learning guitar.
I would think so.
Yeah, it really does because the chords are all in just one position or 2 or 3 positions.
Right.
But just knowing how the musical theory works makes it really easy to pick up the guitar.
Yeah, for sure.
So I'm sure you could actually pick up a guitar and probably be playing a really good tune in about a week.
Not a bad idea. Maybe I should try it.
Yeah, give it a shot sometime, right? Yeah. Awesome. And we do have a guest joining us today. Her name is Shanon Renee. And as so many people coming onto the show have, she has her own crash and burn story, and it has its own unique twists and turns to it, including what she turned it into, which is also kind of an interesting, unique set of twists and turns. But as listeners know, I'm usually the one who screws up the storyline. So I'm going to turn it over to Shanon and let her tell her own story. Shanon, hi. Welcome to the show. How you doing?
Thank you. I'm feeling amazing and excited to be here. I love the energy so far.
Well, that's what we like. We want the energy to be good all the time, higher and higher, right? That's the goal.
That's the goal.
So give us like the 2-minute, potted biography, so to speak, autobiography.
Yes. Wow. 2 minutes. Well,
go with a minute if you like. Go for 5. I mean, whichever works best.
Take as many minutes as you need.
Yeah. I think I can get it down. So, where I'm at now is like it says, I help people live all out, lit up, and deeply connected. And really, the reason that I got there is I was feeling a lack of vitality, complete disconnect, and just constantly in a battle with myself versus who I really wanted to be. And that really, came out specifically in my marriage. I've been married since 2006, best friends with my husband a few years before that. And we had a lot of journey. And then whenever we had my daughter, of course, I started to unpack, why am I the way that I am? Who do I want to be? How do I want to show up for her? And that in addition to just the nature of adding another being to a relationship really exposed cracks in our relationship and also really within myself and how I was bringing certain energetics and certain expectations and ideas to the relationship and similarly with him. And that led me down a path of self-discovery. I read a ton of books. I spent a lot of years in analyzation. I need to learn more tools, learn more understanding and why. And then that led me down a path of discovery. We'll call it, the universe guiding me to find Layla Martin, who I did her Vita coaching certification, which is highly based in the wisdom of Tantra and sexuality combined with the science of behavior change, which my background is in behavior change. I've been a personal trainer and coach for a number of years. And also found that no matter what behavior change tools I use, no matter how, to the core we got with somebody's desire to change their why and the smallest incremental changes, there was always something else, right? Something else that we weren't accessing. And through this certification, I really discovered bringing in the somatic experience, going from just thinking about it and action into integrating the entire body, bringing a reclamation of sorts of reconnecting with sex as an energy source that is not just what we see in marketing and in media, even though that can be fun. There's a lot more to it. And that became such a healing experience. And then, I think the culmination was an extreme shift in how I was showing up radically in my relationship, in ownership of what I wanted it to be and letting go of expectations. Not that I didn't need my partner to show up, right? He still has to
I would hope.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, just being able to let go of all of that pressure that I was really putting on him to know things that he wouldn't necessarily know. And then that led me down a road of having my son, and I was able to have an ecstatic birth with him at home, basically free birthed. And so it was like this whole culmination of being completely shut down, completely out of touch with my body, myself, into this kind of full experience. And, so I've been able to take that in serving all of the nuances. Sometimes I work with people around sex. Sometimes it has nothing to do with that. It's really just the central nervous system conditioning and things like that we work with. But that's a bit about how I got to where I am and just insight into what I do with it now.
And it does make sense. I mean, because you're right. The sex is kind of like a little piece of the larger systemic puzzle. And that's really what it sounds like you're dealing with is the system, the human system, so to speak.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
And of course, what you described in your story, I'm sure is very familiar to anyone who's been in any kind of relationship, married or otherwise, where you run into some sort of crisis. And then, after you get past the finger pointing and so forth, you realize, we both have issues going on here.
Yeah.
That's like the theme, right?
Yes. Yeah. And, what I find is, my passion is really serving, those that are in long-term relationships or parents, and specifically men. But really just because that's what's near and dear to my heart based on what I know best and what I feel called to. But really I find that it is totally normal to find that in a relationship. But ultimately, even if you're not in a relationship, it ultimately comes down to a relationship with self.
Yes.
And attuning to, who you really are, why you are the way that you are, responding to all the things around you. It's taken me down a beautiful, deeper journey I think we all do, right? I laugh and I look at philosophers and poets from like years and years and years back. I'm like, we're all on the same ride. We're just experiencing it in different timelines. So
pretty much.
Yes, it is normal. You do have to get past the finger pointing and look at yourself, whether it's a crisis in a relationship with other or a crisis in relationship with yourself.
One of my favorite people in the world, Sam knows, is a woman named Cindy Chavez, a former co-host here on the show. She's a life coach. And she made a really insightful comment one day on one of the episodes. She said, "We are in relationship with everyone and everything."
Yes.
Ooh, she's not wrong.
Right. Yeah. And when you think about it that way, and then address what you were talking about, how important it is to iron out the wrinkles in those relationships. We have lots of relationships to iron out wrinkles on. And the more of those we look at, the more that we engage in ourselves in, the more opportunities there are to unravel them and to unwrinkle them and to smooth them out. So it doesn't really matter if you're in a marriage or even in a long-term relationship. Like you say, you have your relationship with yourself. You have your relationship with your friends, with your employees, or bosses, fellow coworkers, people in your family, friends, associates, anybody that you met on the bus. I mean, literally, it's everybody. And that's just the people. You also have the relationships with your house and with your car and with your computer and with your phone and there's like an endless list of things that we have relationship with, and every single one of them has their own challenges. I just love that.
Yeah. Walt, as I heard you share, we're in relationship with, I think you said everything and everything and everyone, right? Mm-hmm. Is that the quote?
Yeah.
It makes me think
I change it a little bit every time. So, don't worry about the exact wording.
Oh, yeah.
What? Did we lose you? Shannon?
Oh, no, I think I'm having some internet trouble. Are you having internet trouble?
Oh, not noticing any at this end.
I'm not, but I did the last couple episodes, so.
Yeah, poor Sam was just getting bounced all over the place. It was just rough.
Oh, no.
Are we coming through on your end?
Walt, are you there?
We're here. Are you? We hear you. Do you hear us?
Oh, no.
Oh, no.
All right. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put a little message to her in our private chat. Log off and log on again.
You're coming in and out. If you can hear me.
Oh.
Yeah, she's got definite connection issue going on there.
Oh, nuts and bolts.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll give her a minute to reconnect. I'm sure she'll figure out she's got to reconnect. So that'll happen in a moment.
Well, I can speak to something you were saying just
go ahead,
before that. It was just like, somebody, Luke had given me this idea of like giving our cars names and then just like appreciating them for getting us to anywhere we go safely and everything. And I like that. And I haven't had trouble getting places. I always had the intention for a safe and stress-free trip too, but I think between those things, that's making driving not so bad these days.
That's cool. I hadn't heard anybody naming cars. My dad used to name all of his cars. I haven't heard anybody do that in a long, long time. So to hear Lucas doing that, like, oh, cool. I love that. Yeah, he had a different name for every car. I can probably even tell you what most of them are named.
Oh, nice.
Including the cars that he had long before I was born.
Oh, nice. I love that.
There's a sort of a personification side of that, giving, human characteristics to an automobile. But like you say, there's also the relationship side to it. And there's something about naming the vehicle that enhances the relationship. I'm not quite sure exactly why or how. I know I saw it in my dad. And I don't know, maybe you've had the same kind of experience, but there's like an enhancement that comes along with that.
Right. It's like you're more conscious of it, so you think about it, and then.
Right. Yeah. So Shannon is back. I hope the connection's good this time. We'll find out.
Look, this is a first. It always happens. It's like when you take your car to the mechanic and then.
Right. Yeah. Don't sweat it. You would not believe the kind of stuff that happens here. Tuesdays are usually relatively calm. Fridays are the crazy day.
Okay, well, I'm bringing some Friday energy for you then.
There you go. Okay. But we've had. Oh,
that's
my
always
God.
welcome on a Tuesday.
It is. Yeah. But the electronic disruptions that have occurred. I remember one particular time. I had another co-host who's no longer on the show named Linda Armstrong, and she was talking about how energy can actually affect electronics. And literally within 5 seconds of saying that, she got knocked off screen.
Oh my God. Oops.
And that's just one example. It happens a lot, all different kinds of ways. Yeah. So you're actually right in the flow. Don't worry about it.
Beautiful. Okay. Yeah. Well, I had something to say, but I feel like you both moved the conversation forward. So I want to make sure
that's okay. Go back to what you were saying. We want to hear what you had to say.
Filling in the
time. You were talking about the quote about being in relationship with everything and everyone, or some version of that quote. And it actually made me think of really a pivotal moment in my journey. I read the book The Field by Lynn McTaggart. Have you read that?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I haven't read that one, but I know Lynn and I know The Power of Eight. That's her famous book, but yeah.
Yeah. So I think reading The Field, it was such a beautiful, just affirmation for me around all the things that I inherently knew or were feeling. I don't think for me that I need the science behind it particularly, but to have it laid out in such a beautiful way to be able to say like, no, this stuff is real. This connection to this unseen energy, right, that we're just talking about that interferes with our calls.
I find it to be assuring to know that we have that connection. I think it's like grounds you to know it.
Yes. Yeah. It's such a beautiful thing. And that was, not really the move forward that I needed to accept it, but it was affirming to be able to have conversations about it and stand on it with firmer ground. Like, okay, I hear you might be feeling some resistance to this type of talk about the energy of how you show up in a relationship or the experiences and how you hold them in your body and how that affects things around you. To have it backed up scientifically was really amazing. And it just made me think of it, obviously, because the field is that connection to everything.
It really is. Yeah. And indeed, that's actually the source of all connections.
Yeah.
That's where they all come in, because all people, all objects, all things are created out of that energy.
Mm. Yeah.
Of course, they're all connected. How could they not be at that point when you understand that part?
Yeah. Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
In fact, I actually changed, I mentioned this a couple times on the show. I changed my viewpoint about how the universe works after hearing about this. The way I used to think about it was we were humans with other species here on planet Earth looking out at the stars, and the stars were these cold, distant places and no real life. It's just the life is here and we're dealing with this huge expanse. And then I heard and learned about this understanding of how energy works, and my entire understanding shifted so that now that universe is just full of life in my mind. Not just in the stars, but between the stars. The empty space isn't empty. It's all energy. The whole thing is energy. And then I looked back down at Earth, and this is all energy. I mean, the rocks and trees are energy. Everything is energy everywhere. And it gives you an entirely different perspective on how the whole thing's put together. It's amazing how big the difference is.
Yeah, I agree. I think for me that comes up, a bit to really the deeper why. And there's a few layers of why I feel that, the work you're doing on your podcast or the type of coaching work that I do feels like a drop in the bucket. But I look at that energy web or that energy connection as a bit of like, like a mushroom system, how everything's connected under the floor.
Yeah.
And I just look at that, and it's so beautiful to know that if I go on my soul's journey and learn whatever I'm supposed to learn and up-level my consciousness, that naturally other people are going to be able to heal without me ever having to touch or speak to them. And that's really a beautiful thing to be able to tune into, because I feel like we're inundated with so much negativity, right? In which I love the essence of what you're trying to do here. Go ahead.
I gathered something from what you just said that I'm guessing here, but I think it's a fairly safe guess. It sounds like you're a fan of the documentary movie Fantastic Fungi, just from the analogy they use there.
Man, I haven't seen it.
You haven't seen it?
I haven't seen it, but I will be watching it.
Oh, you gotta watch that. It's on Netflix, I believe.
Oh.
If nothing else, it will give you fabulous computer CGI creation of that network that you were describing that's underneath the surface of the planet. It's just really beautiful the way they put.
What's it called? Fantastic Fungi or
Fungi, however you pronounce it.
Okay, cool. I'll have to check that out.
Oh, definitely check that one out. I mean, it's got a lot of stuff in it. It gives you definitely a bigger and more improved appreciation of the role that fungus plays in our world. I don't know what your particular associations would be. For myself, I kind of thought it was relatively unimportant until I saw that film. When I saw the film, I said, whoa, this thing plays a major role. Like, holy cow. So totally right. I'm a little surprised you hadn't seen it, given that you made the reference, but that's cool. That's all right.
Yeah. I would say I'm a jack of all trades lately aware of the mushroom fungus world, but definitely not an expert. So I would love to watch that. Thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, for sure.
But carrying on with that theme, though, of how everything is interconnected,
Yes.
how do you find that you bring that into your work when you're working with, with men or with couples or families or whatever?
Yeah. So very indirectly, that's more at the essence of what's beyond or what's behind and beneath everything that I do. I think that, part of the work is helping somebody wake up to, their own inherent wisdom, their own inherent connection, right? These awakenings or experiences that anybody who I think transitions into a role of serving others with this knowledge, right? The goal is to meet somebody where they're at and help them level up their consciousness. So I'm definitely not talking about this very much in an actual session, but the way that I bring it in is really through, especially depending on somebody's level of exposure. But it's a lot of somatic work. It's a lot of unconscious work. It's a lot of guiding them into, their own bodies and really connecting with the different experiences that are being held there. I say subpersonalities likely because I'm not, a psychologist. I am a coach, but connecting with some of those things that drive the bus that we may not be aware of. And I think that naturally lends itself to, connecting with this greater sense of, I'm going to work. I'm in my relationship. I'm having these reactions. And when you start to slow down and just begin to connect with yourself, you start to feel that frequency come alive and you start to naturally connect with the frequency around you. So I would say that that's how I bring it in. And then as somebody goes on their journey, then those conversations may come up.
That makes sense. And you've used the word somatic twice now. And I want to touch on that for a moment because that's a word that different people can actually have different definitions. I mean, there's like one or two definitions of it, but different people can think about the word differently. And I get the feeling you're using it in a very specific manner. So when you say somatic, what are you talking about?
Certainly. It's the actual physical sensations. So it's the sensations, the experience of the emotions, right? How they show up in your body. So, for example, if I'm having a conversation with somebody around, a particular goal that they have, and maybe we're exploring, my question is, right, can you just scan your body or feel into your body for anything that you notice that might be in support of or in resistance to this particular goal or thought, right? Something's going to come online, right? So maybe it's a tightening in the chest, a weight, a constriction in the throat. Maybe it's tingliness, warmth, temperature change. And so the way that I use somatic is really helping somebody connect with the felt sense of their body. And then being able to utilize that felt sense to integrate experiences, expand pleasure, work through different aspects of their life. There's so many different ways then that you can build on that. But does that answer your question?
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
Because I mean, the ways the word somatic typically gets used in broader culture is more about, yes, it is about the body, but it's more like, physical symptoms in a body that's sick or something like that. And so to apply the word in this context, it's a positive switch up really. And I'm liking that.
Yeah.
Because when you do that, what you're really doing is you're saying, let's think about something that we often think about in negative context in a positive way.
Tell me more about what you mean there, or Sam.
Well, for instance, if somebody describes a somatic illness, they'll describe the pains associated with it, and they'll describe, all the symptomology and so forth. Whereas when you're using it, you're talking about in terms of, yes, there can be, like you said, constrictions or whatever in the body, but there can also be other kinds of sensations. You feel a tingling or a buzzing or something like that. And that's perfectly a legitimate way to use the word, but it's not the way it's normally used. And because you're using it that way, you're shifting the vibration of that word into a higher vibrational space. And I like that.
Yeah, exactly. It's certainly used for both. And I think I see what you mean there more. We do typically, whenever we do talk about what we're feeling in our body, we're talking about what's wrong with it or,
right.
the issues that come along with it. But certainly when I am using it, we're not going to shy away from issues of pain or anger or anything like that. We want to feel that too. However, yeah, people, we do not create a lot of space in our daily lives via the way our society is constructed or what we're expected to do or how we're raised to really slow down and notice even the experience of eating or really tasting something, or, you know, we use and throw around words like being mindful or feeling empowered. But what does that really feel like? And how do you then begin to connect with the experience of empowerment and notice all the ways that that feels to make that a superpower of sorts? So when you are feeling constricted or you are coming up against an issue, then you can tap into that. So the somatic, I think for me was the most revolutionary space. Cause like I said, I spent so much time analyzing it and in my head. And oftentimes when I work with people, that's where we're at. Yeah. It's difficult to even be able to connect, even for somebody who does yoga or things like that. There's still sometimes a true disconnect in the slowing down and feeling. Mm-hmm. And that's really powerful.
Yes. I get and appreciate what you're talking about there. We often have, many coaches on the program, and more often than not, their target audiences are women. And so it's a nice refreshing change to have somebody making men the target audience. But the challenge, of course, with the whole male versus female thing, the female, I think, is a little more attuned to being aware of that somatic side. We males are trained for long periods of our lives to avoid it at all costs. Now that's a trend that has thankfully changed significantly in my lifetime, and I'm sure it's going to continue to change, but it's still there. And I imagine you run into clients today who just have never, the male clients who have never even taken the time to check out what's going on there. They're just they're oblivious to it.
Oh, I feel like I want to take a deep exhale for this space. It's so needed. And you're right. There have been a lot of changes. And it even took me a minute to really realize that. I think that I've always enjoyed being around men. I've always enjoyed talking to men. I've always had men as friends. Mm-hmm. But you know, when I went on this whole journey of healing for myself, it was very much under the space of female empowerment and really recognizing what it is to be a woman and what it is to have feminine energy versus masculine in this space that we live in, and coming to terms with all the things I've experienced in my life from a female perspective. And I don't want to sugarcoat it and say that I always love having the responsibility to kind of shepherd this in my relationship. I'm human and I get aggravated sometimes. But overall, I had the opportunity and privilege to really help shepherd this forward for my husband, right? But then things really changed for me when I had my son. You know, I had my daughter first, and I think that was the way it was meant to be, so I could do some healing on myself and then be ready to take on the challenge of raising a son. And it made me look at my husband differently, and it made me really start to question the space for men. And like you said, the expectations, the conditioning, there's not a lot of room to navigate. I'm not a man. I can't speak to that experience, but from what I see, there's not a lot of room to navigate. And, you know, what I find is you have to be strong, but not too strong. It's a lot of duality. We want you to be this, but not this. And that just became like a space of, you know, when I really, and my husband, luckily, he's always fine with me sharing these things. But as we've come closer and worked together, I've seen that in a lot of ways, he needs a deeper love almost than I do, or a deeper connection to the somatic. And I see that with my son as well. I find that he, in our family, he needs more assurance and more connection and more focused attunement than my daughter. And I don't know if that's just my lived experience. Maybe not all, it can't speak for all male and female, but at least in my experience, and then also with working with men, it's just such a needed space. So yes, nobody, I wouldn't say nobody. There's a subsect of people that greatly, like thankfully are in that space. But by and large, when I start working with men, it's very heady. It's very goal oriented, driven, a very specific direction. And then that's beautiful. I think that that's a beautiful aspect of masculinity, but to try to make it safe enough to have them even dip their toe in exploring a more vulnerable or gentle side, that's just not allowed in the traditional space of masculinity. And I find it just such a needed space. And I feel like I could talk about that forever. It's just such a piece to my heart. Like it's so needed. But yeah, no, they're not playing in that water very much.
Yeah.
We need more people to help.
Sam's nodding very much, which he usually does, but he's especially nodding today, right? Because you and I, we're hearing all the stuff that we know is true, right?
For sure. Just, a lot of this kind of makes sense to me and resonates with me. Can't think of specifically. I kind of just lost track of where we were, but
but that's part of it. That's part of that training. The training does exactly that. It blocks it out. You learn to derail any process that goes down that road. So you have to kind of learn to burn some new neurons, so to speak. Create new paths.
Yeah.
Like you're in the present and you're like, okay, no, I'm feeling all this. And then like you stop for a second, like, wait, where was I?
Yeah.
One thing that I remember growing up was the first time I encountered a male celebrity who, I don't think it was really what he was trying to do, but he was the first one to let me believe that it was okay for a male to feel things. You guys might not even know who he is. You might know him. I'm not sure. His name was Jim Croce. He was a songwriter and a musician. You know Jim Croce? Okay.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, he died in the early 70s, so we lost him much too early. He was a talent. Boy, I mean, he could have done what you do, Tom, Sam, rather. He could have just improvised. He could just make stuff up. It was just fabulous what he could do. And he was a great songwriter. But he didn't actually write anything in his lyrics that said this overtly. But the way he wrote his lyrics and his tunes, and Sam, I'm sure you'll identify with this, the way he orchestrated his tunes was so different from the way most of pop music was at that time, that it basically laid a new path, and it was being done by a male. But it wasn't like, okay, here's the new path for men. There was no message like that. You just kind of subvertly picked it up. You kind of like below the surface, you picked it up. At least I did. I was telling a friend about this just the other day, and it was one of those things that you don't really, I would never have talked about it. I would never have, said to my male friends, doesn't Jim Croce make you just, feel your feminine side or something like that? It just would not have come up in the conversation, but I was still feeling it. And I think, we have a lot of guests who, like I said, work with women, which is great. And they often talk about female role models who have helped them or have helped their clients or anything along that line. And I keep thinking, where are the male role models? There are some. We need more of them. But when they do come along, I think there are some men who are able to latch onto them secretly, quietly, privately. But they're there, and it helps.
Yeah, well, one, I need to go back and listen to more Jim Croce music so I can hear what you're talking about.
It's more in the melody than in the lyrics, although some of the songs, especially the love songs, they have a very gentle side, and that also ties into it. Yeah,
I love that. I'm curious who stands out to you as male role models in that field or in that area.
There aren't a lot. I actually have to think about that one for a moment.
I personally can't think of any myself.
I mean, different people have different aspects of themselves. So in that sense, you tend to get role models. I'll point to one that I think does a pretty good job in that way. Jim Carrey, the comedian. He has, because of the way he's able to construct his characters that he does, both in the movies and as a stand-up comedian, I think he allows his characters to be the feeling males. And that becomes a kind of a role model. Again, not spoken, not saying or anything like that, but it just kind of, it's sotto voce, so to speak. Sam?
Yeah, it's like leading by example a little bit in a way.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Let's see. Who else would I point to? You can't think of anybody either, can you, Sam?
My dad. That's about
Your dad? Okay, well, that's good. That's good.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah. That's really good. That counts.
Oh, good, good, good. Yeah, no, he's always often just knows the right things to say and stuff, and good person to go for like when you're muddled with your thoughts and gets to like kind of cut through the nonsense.
Mm.
And I think that you could probably find some in the LGBTQ community because it's a little bit more accepted in that community.
For sure, for sure.
Yeah. Although I don't know that community well enough to name a name, so I'm drawing a blank. But
That's okay. I don't. Yeah, I'm not the best with knowing who like famous people are in such a
Right.
general. So.
well, yeah, I don't even keep up with the popular culture. So if you ask me to name who's a top 10 singer today, I'll go I don't know. I have no idea.
I like.
Oh well, actually, I could think of somebody else from my generation. Actually, it was a prior generation. Again, it wasn't in anything specific that he said. It was the way he carried himself, and the way he carried himself led him to being one of the most trusted people in America, and that was the newsman Walter Cronkite.
Mm.
Okay.
Walter would have a way to connect with people that basically said, yeah, there's this stuff going on. It's okay. It's going to be okay. He didn't say it. It just, that's the way it came across. And that is tapping into the feeling energy. So in that sense, he was providing a role model that way, and it paid off beautifully. He was far and away in that generation. He was far and away the most trusted newsman on television.
Yeah. Yeah. I find that piece that you're talking about, he wasn't saying it. You said it for both examples, right? It's not something specifically that they said a bit in the lyrics of the music, but you know, I don't know. You are both musicians, so maybe this is not accurate, but I feel like the lyrics absolutely make a difference, but it's the feeling of the actual music coming through, where you sense some of that stuff.
Yes. That's
For
exactly
sure. Like a lot of people I know have told me that they don't listen to the lyrics as much. It's just more the music and the energy behind it. And then like, even like sometimes I'll listen to songs in different languages because it's like, I don't know what they're saying exactly, but the feeling of it is still very much there.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I think the feeling you're giving those examples of, it's not what they said. It's how they made you feel either in their presence or through the music. And I think that's really, what it is. And that's part of the power of the work. I remember whenever I was really kind of in the depths of my initial transformation. I mean, it's never ending. I'm still running into the same roadblocks and constantly going back to do practices and things like that. But I remember I walked up to somebody, who hadn't seen me in a while, and they were like, it was one of those, like, something's different about you. Like you just feel different. And that's what I find, a lot with this work. And also I think just with people energetically who we're drawn to, it's a sense of groundedness and connectedness, to self and maybe that greater field. But it's like a knowing where you can tell that, and it's not that it's bad to be in your head. I'm thankful that we're able to intellectualize, but they're not constantly like, what should I say? What am I doing? Like in the cycle, it's they're really authentically coming from like that innate wisdom. I always come back to that innate knowing, that innate wisdom of whatever is, and a deep presence. And
that is one of the biggest challenges for most males, I believe, is making that connection. I know it was for me. When I first started doing this work about 10, 12 years ago, I couldn't connect. Well, I was always connected. I just didn't know it. Let's put it that way. It took me a while to recognize that where the connection was, so to speak. That's what that is. Oh, okay. But until then, somebody would say, go within. I'd say, within where? I didn't know what to do. Because I didn't have the energetic vocabulary. I mean, I could hear the words. I had some understanding of what the words would mean, but in terms of how they actually played in the body and in the mind-body connection and the heart connection and so forth, it's like there was a gap. It's like there was a short in the electrical system.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that you describing that is really what I find as well. It's very outcome driven, performance. Am I successful enough? Am I providing enough? do I have enough, money, cars, clothes, whatever, to essentially win my love, safety, and belonging, I feel like is almost what I see. And also I think because my experience and what I see with people and in our society, right, especially for boys, is that we don't give them a lot of room to feel when they're babies either. It's a lot of like, brush it off, big guy, you're brave, you didn't cry. So you're learning that to not feel is the way to get love. And so there is, for me, it is literally like a disconnect, head and mind and body, period. Even though we know it's all one, it is a complete block to where I need to think my way through this. I need to be thinking about my next step. I need to be thinking about my next project or the next thing that I do well to get acknowledgement, versus grounding in the fact that I'm already enough just as I am. I don't need to prove anything. So absolutely, consistently, I see a disconnect in that.
And by the way, I've come to realize I had always had the connection, and I knew the connection. I recognized it, but until I recognized it consciously, so to speak, say, oh, that's it, I discounted it. So what we call a disconnect, it isn't truly a disconnect. It's an ignoring. Just ignoring that, well, that can't be anything. Yeah, I know that's there. It's always been there, but that's not anything at all. That's what the nature of the disconnect is. It's a denying that that's important, whatever that thing is. And it isn't until you kind of dive into the thing, so to speak, and start living there for a bit and trying to do your best to feel from there, even though you aren't quite sure what that means, all of a sudden then perspective starts to shift. But until you do that, you don't even know that there's a perspective to shift. Right, Sam?
Yeah, for sure. Because it's like a lot of things are a matter of perspective, but if you're stuck in the same one for a lot of the time, then that possibility doesn't really register with you.
Yeah, there's nothing to compare it to.
Right.
You need a comparator, and there isn't one. But once you recognize that, at least for me, once I recognized that's what it was, I remember too, it was actually here on the podcast the first time that I realized that's what it was, that was the connection. And I said to myself, and I think I even said it on the show, that's just like a light that's always on. It never changes. It never shifts. It's always on. And so that's why I ignored it, because, there's no contrast in it. It's just a light. There it is. Okay. Yep. The light's on. Look again. Yep. The light's still on. There it is. It never changed. So I didn't know what to do with it. Didn't know how to interact with it. It certainly didn't fit into the world of, polarity and contrast. Well, actually it did, but I didn't realize that at the time.
Yeah.
Right.
I couldn't find a way to make it fit in, so it must not be important. That was my conclusion.
What was that experience like for you? You may have talked about it on the show, but I'm happy you shared that, because that was my question. What did you do? But what was your experience like when you were able to acknowledge it?
I can't say it was a big experience. It was more like, it was like the light got turned on. It was like, oh, that's what it is? Really? Oh. I still didn't know what to do with it, because I never worked with it before. But that's really it. It was almost like it was a letdown. It's supposed to be more than that, isn't it?
I could definitely see where it could be a letdown, because it's almost like a settling in.
Yeah.
It's, it's not like you're finally going on this vacation. It's like just a coming into something. I see that coming into something that was already there.
Yeah. But when you start playing with it, and it takes a while even to learn to play with it. Because at first it's just kind of there like, okay, well, there it is. What do I do now? You have no experience playing with it. But at some point, usually it's because there's something that goes wrong, something that, the day doesn't go right. Somebody, chews you out about something, whatever. And for whatever reason, at that time, you remembered the conversation with somebody where you finally realized that was the inner being part. And so you just kind of do a little quick flick look there. Just see what happens. And then you get something different. You get a different feel, a different experience, a different thought, something you hadn't thought of before. And in my case, I actually had to have that happen a number of times. But after it happened a few times, I began to realize, that there's actually a significance to that. I'm still grasping what that significance is, but I can tell it's not just the light that's on all the time. There's something about interacting with that place that actually does have real world consequences.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's really I find them, I want to say magic. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of fun, but it's a lot of work.
It's both.
But it feels so accurate when I hear you say that, right? It's not like this overwhelming, like magic moment when you're able to connect with it.
Right.
But like you said, when you're able to actually start to understand how to use it for both extreme challenging moments or how you're reacting in a relationship or sex or with your career, giving a speech, whatever it is, that is the game changer. And it allows you to be deeply connected. It allows you to be in your knowing confidence, no matter what, and expand that. And then expand that to others. It's amazing. Yes.
Right.
The magic is when you start to play with it, for sure.
And I like that second part that you talked about there, because what you really were identifying, if I were to group it all, is when you're getting high vibe, when all of a sudden you're feeling good about something really, really good.
Yeah.
And then you start noticing, oh, when I'm feeling good, I'm feeling that. I mean, you always did before, but now you're making the association. And so every time that you get to a high place, then you feel the association again, like, oh yeah, there it is again. There it is again. There it is again. Oh, now it starts to begin to make sense. Now you start to realize that really is integrative to who I am. But you have to go through that long drawn out process. If you've been out of touch with it throughout most of your life, you have to go through the whole process over a slow period of time before you finally begin to trust, wow, that's always there whenever I'm feeling good. It always feels constricted when I'm feeling bad. Oh yeah, very consistent. That's useful. I'm still not necessarily sure what to do with it, but at least I have that much now. And now I'm starting to build a relationship with it.
Yes, exactly. You are building a relationship with it. I obviously, but I definitely, it is a very slow journey. Sometimes I find, and it's normal, we all want everything right now. Like I want to be transformed right now. I want to be in my highest vibration right now.
Especially in the 21st century, it's instant gratification era, right?
Yes. And, what has been is what feels normal and safe for your body and your existence. And to expect that to just shift, you're talking about deeply ingrained imprints and neural connections and all of these things that essentially have to be gently and authentically rewired. And that takes time and self-compassion. And something that you said about that high vibration piece, I find is that it's that, and I think we're saying the same thing. It's also the nuance of that, right? Knowing that you can be high vibe in a shadow state. You can be high vibe in your sadness. You can be high vibe from different parts of your being and your identity. And it doesn't, I say that because I use very much about high vibration being like positive and mantras and all these things, which I think there's truth to that.
Sure.
And though it's much more complex, much like we are.
It is complex. And you're right. We do have a tendency, male and female, I think, we have a tendency to want to simplify things. And so we kind of oversimplify. We say, oh, well, it's always this, or it's always that. It's always, this is always about a mantra, but doing this. And well, no, it's actually a mixture. I have, one particular co-host on Friday. One of the favorite things he likes to ask a guest, he likes to ask me and the other co-host is, do you have a favorite affirmation that you like to use to do X, whatever X is? And my response is always, what day? It's different every day. Some days I don't even want to do an affirmation. I always try to do something every day to, do the connection, meditate on it, do some sort of a practice to help stay in a more positive mindset as much as I can. But I don't really like doing the same one over and over again. A lot of people do, and I give them a lot of credit, and I say, whoa, you're lucky that you love to do that same affirmation over and over again. For me, that would just drive me nuts. I just can't do that.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. I would like the nuance too.
I think all of us like nuance to one degree or another. It's just part of being human. So give us a little more clue when you're working with, we've been talking about men, but you also work with couples. What do you find the dynamic typically is with that? And again, we're generalizing, so we got to be a little careful, but what do you find comes up most often when you're working with couples where the energy is concerned? And I think we just got a screen freeze. Are you there? You can see the
I'm
look
here.
out of her face.
Can you ask me that question again? What do I find?
Oh, okay.
Yeah. What do I find energetically with couples?
Yeah. Okay. There's a quick way to ask the question. That's good. Yes. We're having trouble with our connection today.
Yeah. When I'm working with couples, just to be clear, and I'm so sorry, this really, I know you experience all these tech things all the time, but
it happens.
Can you ask me the question again so I can answer it specifically for what you're wanting?
Well, talk about the energetic side of when you're working with couples.
Yeah. Well, this may be going down a path you're not necessarily talking about, so let me know. But, it's both. It's what we've been talking about. It's the energy of each individual coming to the table and helping them through their own individual journey. But there's so many fun practices when it comes to intimacy that can be based in healing and understanding attachment. It can be based in the energetics of communication. It can be breath work, focus, intention. There's amazing things to do that you can do individually and then also come together, because obviously whenever we're in relationship, those energies are playing off of each other. And so to be able to bring them into practice of noticing those things and really attuning that helps to increase the space of intimacy, understanding, and connection in the relationship at large, but then also with more specific things, whether it's how they show up as lovers or how they show up as co-parents. So the sky's the limit. I love to play in that space, maybe because I've had to journey and continue to journey in that space on my own. But it's really beautiful. And I think what I find is that in relationships, sometimes we forget the humanness of our partner and that they are coming, with their own journey, makeup, lived experiences, and they just get placed into this is who I am in a relationship with. This is what I think of you. This is how I see you. And I find that bringing them into the energy of each other through whatever path exposes that humanness and really creates just a deep, loving connection where people are able to then begin better cycles of actually, letting go of who they were, growing into who they are, kind of this death and rebirth cycle that has to happen, especially in long-term relationships.
Right.
So, that could be a whole podcast in itself.
Oh, of course.
But, that's a bit of what comes up when you ask me that question.
Yeah. Well, I'm also wondering if, I'm pretty sure I know what the answer is, but I'm wondering to what degree you find that the mutual understanding of the female approach to energy versus the male approach to energy, because of what we've been talking about, the various societal strictures that are in place. To what degree does that become part of the conversation when you're helping a couple with whatever it is you're trying to help them with?
Yeah, it can. It absolutely can. I think David Data's book, The Way of the Superior, talks about it really, really well. Talks about those masculine and feminine polarities. I often will bring that into the conversation. But I think specifically when it comes to working with men and really helping them understand, if they're in partnership, the female aspect, the feminine, and this isn't cut and dry, right? Everybody is a bit different on the spectrum of these energies, but generally the feminine is more open, surrendered, relaxed, right? Ideally we would be running in fields and laying around all day in community with our sisters and babies and whatever, tending to the space or casually foraging, whatever it looks like. And, the masculine being like, I'm going to get stuff done. I'm driven. I'm not harder, but just more forceful, but not in a negative way. More on demand, more due. And it can be, and that is indirectly, right? We're not necessarily talking about energy, but just the space that people need to be in, right? To even have a conversation, to be turned on, to receive compliments, to receive love. All of these things have to be in space, because if as a female, I'm completely out of alignment with my feminine energy and always making the decisions, always getting stuff done, always running on the lists, right? There's not going to be a lot of room for connection. And vice versa. When I find with the men that I work with who are in relationship with women, and I typically work with heterosexual couples. Again, that's just my area, but it can exist with any type of partnership. You have these polarities. It doesn't have to be a man and a woman. Mm-hmm. It definitely comes up, right? Understanding what a man needs to kind of feel sovereign in his masculinity as well. So yes, it does come up, but it's so nuanced and so individualized per couple. And again, I'm not necessarily talking about it so directly. It's more indirect through goals and practices and guiding them through experiences. But it comes up and it plays a role. And again, just like waking up to your own experience of energy, your own body, they start to tend to wake up to the needs of the other person just through those experiences. And then maybe some insight into the energy.
Very good. I like your approach. I like what you're doing for work. And I like that you're working specifically with men. I think it's really cool. We're running out of time, and I want to make sure we get some information out there. So first of all, if there is a man or a couple who are looking for some help and they think that you might be a good match for what they're trying to do, how do they reach out to you? Uh-oh, we get another freeze.
No. Give it a minute.
Hello? That screen just...
if they want to...
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, if they want to connect with me, they can find me at shannonrenee.com or on Instagram at shannonrenee. That is the space that I love to work in. I love to go deeper with people in containers where we're really trying to make changes. It's not going to be a quick fix. And that's the best way to keep up with me. We're going to journey together. And that's where I'm at.
We'll make sure that there's a link in the show notes too, so that anyone who is interested, they'll have a quick and easy way to link to you and find out about you.
Yeah.
Something else I especially want to tell you. I know I say this, Sam, every time, but I especially want to say this to you. This is a practice that I've been doing now for about 4 or 5 months on the show, and I'm finding it really is needed, and it's an area that's basically unacknowledged. And so I'm getting excited about doing this every time. But it especially, in my mind, applies to you because of the work that you're doing, particularly with males. There are many people, male and female, who have, they've seen you on a podcast or heard you on a podcast, or they've read something that you wrote, but you don't know who they are. Maybe they visited your website, you never heard from them, but they saw something, they found something that affected them and helped them in some way. And you'll never meet them. You'll never see them. You'll never see what the result was, but you made a difference in their lives. And we never really recognize that on a direct planned method or scale. So on their behalf, I want to thank you for what you do to help the ones that are the unseen, that you'll never meet them. You'll never see them, but you touch their lives and you continue to touch their lives. So on their behalf, thank you.
Thank you. That is a beautiful, beautiful piece. And gratitude back to your space as well. I think just trying to bring happiness and joy or up-leveling anything to somebody's day is a beautiful space. So thank you. Thank you both.
Thank you very much. Sam brings the space every single time. I mean,
I can see that.
From the moment he comes on screen, most people, it's a podcast, so 99% don't see him on screen. All they do is hear the audio.
Oh, yes.
But so I like to tell them this so they know this. Every time Sam's on screen, he has a big smile. Most of the time, whenever he's hearing something he likes, he's nodding his head. He's getting really excited. He's bouncing around. I mean, it's the perfect male energy as far as I'm concerned, because it's free form. Yes, here we go. All right, let's go for it. This is wonderful. This is connected. This is excellent. That's the energy that Sam brings. So. Yeah.
Happy to do so.
On behalf of the audience, thank you for the energy you bring too, Sam.
Well, of course.
And thank you also to our podcast listeners, because without you, hey, first of all, we wouldn't have a podcast. And I mean, I've been doing this for 10 years now. I'm still amazed that I have listeners, and I have a lot of them, and they just keep coming back. We must be doing something right. So I really do appreciate the listeners. Thank you very much for continuing to listen. We'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.